Alrighty, I think it's safe to go ahead and start. Does anybody have any experience using assignments or exams on Blackboard?
Yes.
To what extent? Maybe like using the assignments.
Very minimal usage, actually.
All right. So I'm gonna go how to do an assignment first and then how to do an exam and how to view those submissions. And afterwards I'll open the room to questions. And if you want me to slow down, by all means, let me know. So I'm gonna share my screen now. Alrighty, so what we're going to want to do first is we're going to head into one of the courses, and I'm going to pick somewhere to insert my exam or my assignment. I'm going to go to an assignments. This menu on the left-hand side is customizable, and you can put it anywhere you want. So here I have some that I've made. I'm going to build a new assignment. So I'm going to go to assessments and an assignment. So an assignment works just as is. I create it and students will have like a box that they can submit all their folders to or all their files to. And that's basically how an assignment works. So I'm going to do this example. If you wanted to add instructions, you could. And if you wanted to add some files, maybe handouts or references for them, you can upload them here. This option for due dates is if you want them to have it done by a specific time. If we enable due date, that means in their Blackboard calendar that everybody has, it's going to let them know that they have an assignment that's due this date. Points possible is mandatory when creating an assignment, because when you create an assignment or an exam, it automatically creates columns in your grade center if you want to use them. If you had a rubric, if you know what a rubric is, it's basically a reference to what categories you're looking for within an assignment and how you grade them based on those categories. It could either be for you if you want it there for reference or for all students. So these options here, first one is submission details. If you created groups in your course, you can have group submissions. So only one student of a group has to submit it. Portfolio submission isn't really used, so you don't have to really worry about that one. And individual submission is there by default, so everybody has one submission. Number of attempts, if you want them to have one or multiple or unlimited. Multiple means you select how many attempts. Score attempts using last graded attempt. You have the option to grade the highest one, take the grade from the lowest one, or the average of all of them. You also have safe assign. If you know what safe assign is, it basically reads a document and it gives you the percentage of how much of it was plagiarized. So you could check that off if you want to use it. A good note to have is exclude submissions from the institutional and global references databases. So if you don't check this off and maybe you have multiple attempts and a student realizes they made a mistake on the first one and the second one they made that minor change, that second one might come up as 99% plagiarized because it's reading the document of the first time they submitted it. So to prevent that, if you do have maybe multiple attempts on, you might want to hit this one. Grading options isn't really often used, so enable anonymous grading. So once you get all the submissions, as you're grading them, it won't have a name to each assignment till afterwards. And enable delegated grading is if you have graders in your course and you can assign specific students to those graders. Display of grades. This is, you don't really have to touch this one. This is just how the grade or the submission looks in the grade center. This is here by default. And the last option to look at is availability. So you can either make it available right away, or you can hide it. And display after means that it's not going to show the students that this assignment has been posted up until this date, and it stops displaying if we display until, and it stops showing at this date. And if you wanted to track the number of views that students are clicking into the assignment, you can enable this. And we're going to hit submit. I'm just going to leave it at single attempt. And there it is. So when it's grayed out, when a submit or assignment or a test is grayed out, that means it's not available, and it's telling you why it's not available. And if it's colored in, that means it's available for students to see. Any questions so far about assignments? Awesome. I'm going to continue on to creating a test. So the same place we went for assignment, I'm going to go to test instead. So under assessments and test. So I don't have any tests available in my course to deploy. So once you create a test, you can't use it again. So I have tests in my course, but since I've already have them deployed and ready for students to take, they're not appearing here. So I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to give it a name. And if you wanted to give it description and instructions, you could. You don't necessarily have to. Things that are mandatory have an orange asterisk next to it. So I'm going to hit submit. And it's going to take me straight to the test canvas. So here's where I'm going to make all the questions for the exam. So we have the option to create question, reuse question, and upload question. So upload question, we don't really use because it's asking for a specific file. So we don't really support this function. But reuse question is if you have prior exams or test pools in your course, you can find questions and pull questions from previous exams. So maybe if you had a final exam and you wanted to reuse questions from the midterm or other exams, you can find them through here. I'll show you how that looks like. So here are all the exams I've created before, and if I selected one, it would give me the question from there. So I'm going to exit this out and then create question. So these are all the question types you can use. The most common ones are usually multiple choice, essay, or short answer. Multiple choice works as multiple choice. I'll show you how that looks like. Here I'm going to write in a question. And this option space is how you want the question presented to students. So how you want it numbered, if you want it numbered or you want it numerical. Answer orientation, if you want the answers going this way or the long way. If you want to allow partial credit, and showing answers in a random order. So I can have as many answers as I wanted. So by default, it's 4. But if I wanted to remove any, I could. So now I have 3 answers. And if you wanted to add more, you can add more. I'm not sure how many questions you're going to have with 74 options, but you have the option to do that. So I'm going to give it some answers. To the left-hand side of each answer, you have this little circle, and you can mark which one is the right one. And I'm going to hit submit. I can either hit submit down here or submit and create another one. And if I hit that one, it's going to open up with a new multiple choice answer question. So I'm going to hit submit. And it's going to take me back to the list. Maybe if I wanted to have a short answer, I'll show you how that looks. So down here, this set the number of rows that will display in the answer field. By default, it's 3. So that's how many lines they have to write in. So if you wanted them to just write maybe one sentence on one line, you can hit 1. And that's how many rows they have to write in. This answer text is mainly for your reference, or if you wanted them to see the feedback afterwards, like what should have been here, you can write it in here. But you don't necessarily have to. Here you have the option for rubrics if you wanted to, the same way you had in assignments. And categories and keywords are more for somebody who's very into creating these exams on Blackboard. So the same way we went to reuse questions from other exams, you can tag one question with a category, a topic, the level of its difficulty, and keywords in case you wanted to search them afterwards. And instructor notes is while you're grading it, because it's a short answer, you are going to come back into a submission and grade it and view that. So if you wanted to add some notes for yourself when you come back later on, you can add them here. So I'm going to hit submit. So now I have a list of questions. So right under this banner where we have the options of questions, you're going to see this. So first is this description, if we had any, instructions, if we had any, the total questions we have so far, and the total points we have so far. So by default, Blackboard gives each question 10 points, but if you wanted to change that, you could just hit this and change it there. Oops. So 5. If you wanted to make it extra credit, that would be extra credit, and you can hit submit. And every question you could change the points possible. You can hit all of them or hit all the ones that apply and make them all, make certain ones 7 points, 6 points, and update. Maybe because this is a short answer, I want to change this one to be a bit more weight. So it's 10 points. A good note to remember when you're making these exams and maybe afterwards, you can delete questions after the fact an exam has been taken. Like if there's some submissions and you feel that there's some that are wrong, you could delete the question and it will regrade it. But you can't add or edit questions after an exam has been deployed and students have taken the exam. You can only delete and regrade. You can also change the order of the questions by just moving it up and down. You also have this option right here, and you can select and move them down that way. So that's about the functionality of creating the questions. So once I'm satisfied with how many questions and the points and all that kind of stuff is, I'm going to hit OK on the bottom right. And here's the exam we just created. So I'm going to select it and hit submit. And it's going to take me to the test options. So here you have a second chance to add a description if you wanted to. And the first set of options are test availability. So this is when the test is available to students and how often or how long. I can make it readily available to students. Add a new announcement for this test. That means in our announcements page, it's going to create an announcement saying that this test has been deployed, and they're going to get a notification in their Blackboard notifications page. Multiple attempts, if you want to allow for that. You could give it the number of attempts or unlimited attempts. And once you hit this option, this one is going to stop being grayed out, and you can select which one you want graded. So the highest grade, the lowest grade, the average of them, or the first and the last one. The option for forced completion means that in one sitting, a student has to finish the exam. If they leave it, that means it's automatically submitted. The set timer is how long you want them to have. So here it has 60 minutes by default. If I leave auto submit off, that means a student can continue the exam after 60 minutes, but it's going to flag me that they were late for that submission. And if I have it on, at 60 minutes, that test is being submitted by all means. The display after and display until works the same way as the assignment. So if I hit display after, it's going to start showing students this exam on this date, and until, it's going to stop showing the students this exam on this date and time. You can enable a password if you wanted to. And test availability exceptions is maybe you have students who have special needs and they maybe need longer time, or maybe a student had an emergency, so you're giving a student the option to do it on another date, or you don't want multiple attempts for them, or that kind of stuff. We would add a user and all the options we set for all the students, we can change them here for this one student. So if I want to take out forced completion for them, if I want them to do it on a different date, the timer and the auto submit and the attempts, and we can change that all for this one student. If I scroll a bit down, this is the due date. It works the same way as the assignments has it. So it's due this date. It's going to tell the students, hey, that you have an exam and it needs to be done by this time. And if you hit this, do not allow students to start the test if the due date has passed. That means at the end of the due date, they will no longer have this test available. And if you don't hit it, that means students can do it after the due date, but it's going to flag you late, just like the auto submit. Or the timer, I'm sorry. Self-assessment options, you don't really have to change. You can change this, but if you have an exam that's only multiple choice, it's not going to grade it for you. If you have this the way it is, it's going to grade a multiple choice and just give you the grade because it has all the right answers already known. But if you have an exam that has essays and short answers, this option won't matter because you will still have to go into that submission and grade it. Show test results and feedback to students. So this is if you want students to have what information of the exam you want students to have after they've taken the exam. So you can have students see the scores of each question, which answers they've gotten right, all the answers correct, or just the submitted ones. Feedback and show incorrect questions, and you can customize when you want them to see all this information. So after the submission, or maybe if you don't want students to cheat and show each other what answers they got right or which ones they got wrong, you can do it after all the attempts are graded, or maybe on a specific date, or just a one-time thing they can view it. And you have the option to do 2 different times. So maybe you want students to just see the answers that they got wrong after the submission, but after all the things are graded, you can allow them to view all the feedback. And the last set of options is how it's presented. So all at once means it's going to show the students all the questions listed out, or one at a time means that it's going to give them one question at a time and they can go on and go forth with each question. And with this one, you can enable prohibit backtracking. So you won't let a student change an answer of a question they've already previously done. And randomized question means that it's going to randomize the question, so no student should have the same exam, or at least the questions in the same way, unless you have like a 5-question exam and you have like 20 students and it can only, well, that's a bad example because 5 times 5 is 25, but you know what I mean. So I'm going to hit submit because I'm satisfied with all the options. And now my exam is there and it's available for students. Any questions so far? Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes.
I teach mathematics and my exams have lots of formulas. So typing all of those formulas in the Word, essentially Word format in that window is close to impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned, I would like to upload my exam actually, but you said that that option is not used. Did I understand you correctly that I cannot just upload a PDF file with my exam and use answers just as multiple choice, for example?
Well, you actually can. So let me I'm sorry, let me go into the test canvas and show you what you can do. So edit the test, I'm here. So let's say you want a multiple choice one, but you want the actual question to be like a PDF kind of thing.
Yes, that's
so
correct.
Right here, you have the HTML text box. So this little paperclip here, you can insert a file.
So I can insert a PDF file.
Yes.
For individual questions, or I can do all questions at once?
How are they going to submit, or how would you have the answers? So
that's my question.
If you have it here, this is for just one question.
This is for one question. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do it. No problem.
Awesome. Any other questions about creating the exam?
What about when students, so along the same lines as the previous question, if students need to write formulas, how is that possible?
I have seen, oh, actually, where is it? File response. So maybe if you wanted them to write it out, because in the text box, it's almost impossible to write out formulas and that kind of thing.
Right.
So maybe you want to use the file response, and you can have students upload a file for that question. That's one option. The thing about math in this format for Blackboard exams, it's really hard because there's no way to like do formulas and do that intricate stuff that math does.
Yep.
But that is one option.
So they would upload like a JPEG of or a picture of a handwritten.
Yes.
Yep, I see.
Well, the question then becomes, how do I grade JPEG uploaded solutions? I mean, I can grade them obviously, but how do I give them back to the students? Do I need to upload the graded page?
Yeah, so this is how you're going to view the submissions. So now that we've had the submission and the students have uploaded everything and taken the exam, I'm going to go to the Grade Center on the bottom left of the course and go into Full Grade Center. And when you create an exam in a column, an exam and an assignment, it automatically creates columns for you. So these are all the columns, all the assignments and tests that I've made here so far. So for the assignment, this is how it looks. I've already gone ahead and graded it prior, but if you haven't, it's going to come up with a yellow exclamation mark. And if we hit this drop down arrow, here's the attempt that they created. So I'm going to hit that. And this is how a file would look. So if I wanted to, I can annotate and mark on the assignment. Here, if they added more than one document, they would all be here. And if you wanted to download them, you could. I can edit the grade here and add some feedback that they would see once I submit this. So that's how an assignment would look like. And for the exam, here, because I only had one multiple choice in this exam, it graded it for me already. If I want to go into it, or if you had a question, an exam that had essays and that kind of thing, it would look like a yellow exclamation mark telling you to grade it. And it's going to look the same way. So we're going to go to the attempt. And this is how it will look like. So if a student had uploaded a JPEG, instead of the answer, it's going to show you the file type. And so you can open it. And you could grade it that way. And then you can add feedback to the learner or grading notes. The cool thing about feedback to the learner, go ahead.
Can I upload my feedback?
Can you upload it?
Yep.
Yes. So here you have the same option to insert a file.
Okay, got it.
You can also add like a voice recording if you wanted to. So that this is a little thing that's only available in feedback to learner, this recording option. So you also have the test information in the submission. this up here, you would have to open it. It tells you the points out of how many points they got, the status if it was completed, or maybe they couldn't finish it because they had a timer and it got auto-submitted, the score and time elapsed, how long they took, when they started it, and the submitted date. If they did it after the timer or after the due date, it would flag you here saying late. You could clear the attempt if you wanted to. Maybe a student had some issues taking the exam and you only had one attempt and you wanted the student to redo it again. You can hit clear attempt and edit the test. So edit the test only makes the changes in this one student's exam. And here you have the option to give an answer partial credit. So this question is 10 points. Maybe their question wasn't completely, or their answer wasn't completely wrong, and I want to give them partial credit. I can give them 7 out of 10 and hit submit. And now that test is 7 points. So that's not kind of, but that's how it works. Any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, how do you prevent students from sharing information, for example, with their cell phones or with chat in browser?
Okay. So, during an exam.
Yes.
So we also have another training. It's about Respondus Lockdown Browser. Have you ever heard of it?
Not until today. No.
Oh, okay. So Respondus Lockdown Browser, you can enable it in an exam, and students won't be able to get out of that exam. So they won't have access to the rest of the internet. They won't have access to the rest of their computer if you enable it. They're only in that exam at that moment.
Okay. And is that software they have to download?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And is there a way to, in Blackboard, to make sure that they can't take the exam unless they've enabled that?
Yes. So if you want, I could show you if nobody opposes, we have enough time. I don't see anyone saying no. So let's go ahead. So under course tools and course
I'm
management.
sorry, I have another question. What if they have a friend sitting next to them and doing the exam?
So we also have, with Respondus Lockdown Browser, we have Respondus Monitor. So it's kind of like a proctoring tool. So Respondus Lockdown Browser just works as a way for students to not go anywhere else but the exam. And Respondus Monitor actually makes them enable their camera and their microphone. And the Respondus Monitor will record their session as they're taking the exam, and it will flag you if maybe they're not looking if they're not looking at the monitor, if they're away from the desk for too long, and you don't necessarily have to proctor them. The software will flag you when they've done that.
Yeah.
So before it was mainly used by like nursing and medical school, but because of like recent things where the whole school now has access to this software. So to enable that, we're going to go to course tools under course management on the bottom left. And we're going to find Respondus Lockdown Browser. I'm going to go into it, and it's going to give me a list of all the exams that I have. And it's going to tell you what has been enabled for each one. So Lockdown Browser and Respondus Monitor. So I'm going to open this one that we just made. And if I hit require Respondus Lockdown Browser, that means a student cannot get to the exam unless they're in Respondus Lockdown Browser first. So if they try to go in on like Chrome or Firefox or anything like that, it's going to flag them like, hey, you need a password. And that's preventing them from going into it unless they're going to Lockdown Browser first. And then from there, if you wanted the Respondus Lockdown Browser to have a password, you can enable it here. The advanced settings lets you maybe, if you wanted to have them access a specific website, or you want them to be able to do this on iPad, because iPad does have the Respondus Lockdown Browser app, so they can do it from there. Maybe you have students who don't necessarily have laptops, but have iPads. They can use that. And monitor webcam settings. You can enable this if you wanted to. And this is continue to respond as lockdown, to respond as monitor. It's going to take you to where you can view all the submissions. I don't really have an exam to show you how that looks like, but you can enable it. So here, before they start the exam, to ensure that that person is the person who should be taking the exam, it's going to ask them all these things. It's going to give them some tips and instructions on how to do it. And the facial detection options. So like if they're looking away, it's going to flag the exam, the video. And it's going to tell the students like, hey, you're not on the video, to go back, and that kind of stuff. I'm not a big expert on it because I haven't really used the monitor often. But if the medical and the nursing school has been using it for a while, I would assume it works pretty well.
If I may.
Go ahead.
Question. This is pretty sophisticated stuff.
Yeah.
Are we assuming that students know all of that already?
Well, if you have it enabled, it's going to have the students, it's going to give the students like a whole walkthrough on how to use the system.
So they will need training essentially.
Yeah, it's usually like 5 minutes before the exam. The software will give them a tutorial and let them know of everything that's going on.
Okay, and another question about platforms. They may have a laptop, they may have different laptops, Windows, whatever. They might have iPads, some of them may just have iPhones or whatever. It's like a multitude of different gadgets they may want to be using.
Yeah.
Are we sure it's all gonna work? Because my impression, half the students on the exam will be complaining that nothing is working.
Sure. So with Lockdown Browser and Respond as Monitor, it only works on Windows, Macs, and iPads. So if somebody has a Chromebook, it won't work because you're not allowed to.
I have MacBook Air. It's not going to work on that one either?
Yeah, it will work on a Mac. As long as you have your Mac like updated, it will work. And the same goes for Microsoft and PCs.
How recent should it be?
I believe it's usually the last 4 updates of the software, of the iOS.
Okay. No, mine is fine, but I'm really concerned about what students are having. And do they have enough broadband capacity to take all of this? Because I'm sitting in my office right now and the sound is kind of not perfect. Let's put it this way.
Okay.
And
I mean,
university. I mean, it's pretty good.
Of course. Well, I can't be completely 100% sure because students are not going to be taking these exams from home, right? So that's all.
Where are the students really? Yeah,
so right now, as of this moment, I mean, students are still on spring break right now, and if classes are going to be held online, some of them who aren't on campus might be home doing this kind of stuff.
That's my point, that they may be in some small village in the middle of nowhere trying to do this.
Of course.
It's
and in that sense, we can't do much. We can only offer advice, and if it doesn't work out, maybe look another way to do it.
Okay, or just look away. I see.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions? Awesome. So we also have other sessions if you guys are interested. I believe from 1 to 2, they're not going to be on, but 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, there's also going to be using Respondus, so more in depth about it, and Zoom, if you guys are going to be using Zoom. So it was a pleasure. If you guys have any other questions for me, let me know, or give us a call to my office. or send us an email. We're always available. Today and for the rest of the week, we will be closing at 12. So if you guys are exploring Blackboard and need help later on, let me know. Just give us a call.
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
So I was actually trying to attend the Zoom session at 12 o'clock. No offense to you, but and I couldn't get in, and so I joined this one instead. And the problem was that I clicked the link, and then it would say, "This is not a valid ID. Try again." And I tried it a few times. So I was wondering if, I mean, I'm just trying to, in the future, if this happens, know what to do. Does that mean the meeting did not happen?
I had the same issue actually
with the Zoom.
The Blackboard plus Zoom one.
Right. Yeah.
That's very interesting. I'm gonna send you guys the link of what it should be. Yeah, I'm not sure how it looks on the website because the last time I checked, it was fine. But let me. Here's how it should be.
On Friday, Blackboard and Zoom.
Oh, okay, then
maybe I brought a link or something.
Might be. That's actually really interesting. And here's the site I know to be for Zoom. But I will ask the rest of my team and the person who's in charge of the Zoom meeting on if they had any issues going with the 12 o'clock session.
Okay, that is the link that I clicked.
All right.
It wasn't working at 12.
Me as well. Yeah.
Okay. Give me just one moment. Let me ask them really quick and see if maybe there was any issues with that session. We had no reported issues, but I'm not sure. I can advise to see if it's able to join at 2 o'clock, but we're gonna see if we can add more sessions and stuff like that if you guys did miss it.
Okay, and how can I report issues?
To report issues, you can email us at blackboardhelp@miami.edu.
And that's even for things related to Zoom or
yes,
anything to do with what the training sessions cover.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Awesome. So thank you guys for joining my session. It was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.